Hey everybody, welcome back to 8 Byte. I've got some more free time now, so I'm going to do a more in-depth episode. And this episode is Seth's episode! If you remember last year, I did an episode for Reagan, and hers was a strawberry cake. But this year, her brother Seth requested an episode, so this is that. He wants a chocolate cake with chocolate and vanilla icing, rainbow sprinkles, and hearts. It should be good. I've made sprinkle cakes before, and they always turn out really neat, so I'm excited for this one. And then Reagan, your episode is coming up soon also, so stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. After that's going, the ingredients you'll need for the cake are going to be 2 cups of flour, 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 1/2 cups of sugar, half a cup or 1 stick of butter that's been softened, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 eggs, 4 ounces of unsweetened chocolate melted, and if you don't have the baking chocolate you need to melt, you can always use the baking cocoa and do 3 tablespoons of baking cocoa with 1 tablespoon of oil, mix it together, and that equals the same thing as 1 block of baking chocolate. And the last thing you're going to need is 1 cup of milk. However, every cake recipe that I've seen always calls for milk, like plain milk. There's some variants here and there, and I've seen for some chocolate cakes they call for coffee. But I've never seen a recipe call for chocolate milk. And so I'm going to try out chocolate milk in this chocolate cake to see what it does. So those are the ingredients for the cake, so now let's start putting them together. So the first step is quite simple. You're going to combine your dry ingredients into a small to medium sized mixing bowl. So that's your flour, your baking soda, and your salt. So now that your dry ingredients are mixed together, we're going to work on the next step, which is creaming together your sugar and your butter in a large mixing bowl. So you're just going to mix them together, either hand mixer, stand mixer, fork, whatever you got. I like to use a fork. I'm just going to mix them together until they're nice and light and fluffy. So after you're done mixing it together, it should look like this, and it's ready for the next ingredients, which are the vanilla and the eggs. So I don't usually measure vanilla. I know the recipe calls for a teaspoon, but it's just a little extra flavor, so teaspoon, there we go. And the next step is our eggs. 2 eggs, crack them one at a time, mix them in, and then move on to the next egg, crack it in, mix it in, and you're good to go. So because this is a chocolate cake, we need to add our chocolate. And once again, you can either use the melted baking chocolate, or you can use the cocoa powder and oil combination. I'm just going to add that to our large bowl and mix it all together. And there is our mixture. Now it's time to add our dry and wet ingredients, which is our flour, baking soda, salt, and our chocolate milk. So when it comes to adding the dry and wet ingredients, I like to do it in either 2 to 3 batches. So I'm going to add some dry ingredients, then I'm going to mix that into the mixture, then I'm going to add the milk, mix that, add the dry ingredients, mix that in, add the milk, mix that in, and do that until everything is inside that one large bowl. When I was in culinary school, they always told us it's important to scrape the bowl. So if you have a bowl scraper or a rubber spatula, you want to use that now and try to get some of that dry mix off the walls and back into the mixture. Okay. And now do the same thing for the wet. I really hope this chocolate idea works. I don't know why there's no chocolate milk chocolate cake recipes that are like well known. So now this is how it is with part of the dry and part of the wet. It's starting to become more like a cake batter. And we're just going to scrape down the bowls and keep going with the rest of the dry and wet ingredients. Okay, so we've got all of our dry and all of our wet ingredients in the large bowl, and here's how it's looking. Nice and cake battery. So now we're going to scrape down the bowls one last time, and then we're going to divvy it out into our two 8-inch round baking pans. Let's grab that spatula again. Scrape off the fork first. And now we kind of really get in there and make sure all the ingredients are mixed together. Looks really good, nice and velvety. It's the word of the day, velvety cake. So now I'm going to get my baking pans ready. Just going to spray them with baking spray, and then we're going to evenly distribute the batter into the two 8-inch round caking pans. Alright, so now that our two pans are sprayed like crazy, now it's time to add our cake mix. And so some people like to go very exact and use a scale. I just kind of like to eyeball it, because like some in this one, some in this one, and then just kind of even it out as I go along. And then you want to make sure that the cake is kind of evenly around the bottom so it doesn't bake unevenly in the oven. That looks good. Now that our cake batter is evenly distributed in our two cake pans, we're going to put those into the 350-degree oven, and they go in there for about 30 minutes. However, I always like to rotate my pans to make sure it's a nice even bake. So in about like 15-18 minutes, I'm going to rotate my pans and then let them bake for the rest of the time, and then hopefully they'll be good to go in about 30 minutes. So, as Reagan made a special request last year for cartwheels in her episode, Seth has made the same request. So while his cake is in the oven, I'm going to go do a cartwheel. Alright, so I'm not the best at cartwheels, so hopefully that'll do. But now it's almost time to switch our cake, or rotate the cakes in the oven. But before I do that, it's time to do the icing. And I always do the same icing. I did it many times last year, so I won't go in depth with it here. But it's 1 part fat to 2 parts sugar. So I'm using 2 sticks of butter, which is half a cup, or half a pound of butter, sorry, half a pound of butter. And I'm going to do 1 pound of sugar to go with that. And then some vanilla. Then I'll split up the icings, make one of them chocolate. Keep the other one vanilla, but I might color some of it pink for the hearts. And yeah, so rotate cakes, get icing together, and we'll be good to go. Yeah. Alright, so the cake still needs a few more minutes in the oven, and I've made my icing. I have it in 2 bowls. This one's the vanilla, and this one's going to be the chocolate. When I do this recipe of icing, and I make it chocolate, I add cocoa powder, and just kind of mix it in to get the chocolatey flavor. That's good. But it always thickens up the icing quite a bit. So not only do I do the cocoa powder, but I also like to use some chocolate syrup. It's liquid chocolate, so it helps loosen it up, but give that chocolate flavor still. And so I'm going to do that next, and I might even add some of the chocolate milk from the cake recipe. So I'm going to do cocoa powder, chocolate syrup, into our butter, sugar, vanilla mixture, and make that chocolatey until it's good to taste. Everyone's tastes are different, just make it to taste right. No real measurements for icing, just sweet and delicious. So yeah, I'm going to do work on that next. Cakes are almost ready, and then we'll come together once the cakes are cooled down to start putting it together. So our cakes are done baking, they look great, they smell delicious, and now we just need to let them cool down for quite a while. You don't want to put icing on hot cakes or else it won't set right. So I will see you in a couple moments, thanks to the magic of editing. Alright, so our cakes are done cooling. It's been about an hour, and now it's time to get them ready for the icing. So when cakes bake, they usually bake with like a dome in the middle, and the first step is called crowning, where you want to cut that dome off to make a nice flat surface for the icing. Alright, so now that our cakes are nice and crowned, it's time to start adding the icing. Since Seth wants a chocolate and vanilla icing on the cake, I think we're going to do a chocolate cake, vanilla icing, chocolate cake, vanilla icing, going up and down, and then put the chocolate icing around the sides where the sprinkles are going to go. So it should look nice and aesthetically pleasing once you cut into it with all the colors on the outside with the chocolate and the white icing pattern on the middle. So we get our white icing. Get a nice scoop of that. We're going to put it right in our cake. Try to save some of it for the top, so let's start with that. Offset spatula, just kind of gently work it around. So there we have our icing in the middle layer. Now we're going to flip over our cake. It's nice and holds together, like so. So I'm going to put white icing on the top, chocolate icing on the outside, and then add the sprinkles, a couple hearts, and we're good to go. So now that we have our top icing and our middle icing, we're going to do the outside icing. It can be somewhat thick, but not too much because the sprinkles are going to cover it, so we just need something for the sprinkles to adhere to. So whenever you ice the sides of cakes, it's always easiest if you have a cake stand that swivels. So I had to go get mine real quick. But I'm going to do the sides in chocolate now, and this just makes it so much easier to turn the cake while you're icing it. I have done it on just a counter. This way is much, much easier. Let's get a little bit of icing. And the first thing I like to do is kind of fill in the gaps between the cakes. So there's all these gaps there, just kind of, whoops. Smush some icing on the insides there. Just get a nice even outside with no bumps in the middle anymore. So just kind of keep going around the whole cake and filling in that gap with chocolate icing. Alright, so now we have the whole side of the cake filled in with icing. And now I'm going to go over it again with icing to build up that layer for the sprinkles to stick to. And again, since the whole side is going to be covered in sprinkles, it doesn't have to be the neatest looking thing. So just kind of put icing from top to bottom, and then we're going to add the sprinkles after that. Alright, so now that we have icing all over our cake, and remind you it's very messy right now because it's going to have a lot more stuff going on, it's time for the sprinkles. And Seth has requested rainbow sprinkles. I did research finding sprinkles for this cake, and the best pricing was Walmart. You can get a 10.5 ounce container of sprinkles for around $3 to $4. But I also found that if you have one near you, the restaurant store, you can get a 5-pound box of sprinkles for about $11. So this is your best bet, but if there's no restaurant store near you, probably Walmart. And so my next step is I gotta set up a little sprinkle station, which you'll see in a moment, and then we're gonna put sprinkles all over this cake. So I'll see you there. Alright, so to add the sprinkles to the cake, you want to have first clean, dry hands. Then you're going to hold the cake with one. A little tricky, it's a little heavy. And then you're going to take your other hand, take handfuls of the sprinkles, and kind of rub them up the sides of the cake. Push them in gently. And that's how you cover the whole side of the cake with sprinkles. So we're going to take our handfuls of sprinkles, start rubbing it up the side of the cake, squish them into the icing, and keep going away the whole way around. So after you go around the cake putting sprinkles all up and on the sides, it should look something like this. I also added a small border on the top to kind of clean up that edge too. And now all that's left is the hearts. So I love how this looks. It's always so pretty when you see all the sprinkles. But yeah, so now we're on to the hearts. Alright, so to finish it off, I put some of the chocolate icing into a piping bag with a number 6 writing tip. I'm just going to add some hearts on top, and then cake will be finished. A fun little tidbit though, if you ever order a cake from a baker and there see some placement of things that make sense but just kind of random, chances are it's hiding a mistake. There was one time I made a Cookie Monster cake, and it was a cookie dough colored fondant rolled on top of the cake, and I ran out of fondant around the edges, so there's some gaps there. So I had to think on my feet, and I cut cookies in half and put those along the base of the cake. And it looked like it made sense there because it was Cookie Monster cake. So if you ever see that awkward placement of things that makes sense but wasn't really requested, they're just hiding some little mistakes like that. But it's all good because it all tastes great. So I was going to pipe some hearts. And there we have it. Our chocolate cake with vanilla chocolate icing, rainbow sprinkles, and hearts. But yeah, hope you enjoyed, Seth. And I will be right back. So here we go, we're going to take a look at this beautiful cross section. So cut into this. Sprinkles are falling off. Nice little wedge of cake. And there we have our cross section of our cake. Chocolate, vanilla, chocolate hearts, chocolate outside, rainbow sprinkles. Plop that down there. And now time for the outro. So there you guys have it. Seth's episode. A chocolate cake from start to finish with vanilla and chocolate icing, rainbow sprinkles, hearts, and I also did a cartwheel. So I'm excited to try this out. I don't have anything to compare it to based off of the plain milk versus the chocolate milk, but I'm really excited to see how it tastes. So here we go. Try a bite. It's just a really good chocolate cake. Actually, that chocolate milk, it adds something to it. It's weird to say because it's all chocolate, but that little bit of chocolate milk just kind of pushes that chocolate flavor even more. That's actually really good. So, yeah. So thank you, Seth, for the episode idea, and thank you all for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye, everybody. Bye. And when I was in culinary school, they always told us it's important to scrape your bowl. So get your either bowl scraper, rubber. In culinary school, they always told us it's important to scrape down the bowl. So if you have a bowl scraper,
Okay.